Magandang araw mga kabatas natin at welcome sa isa namang live stream. Mga kabatas natin, this is very interesting also, no? Hindi ko nga na parang nung nakita ko to, tapos pinanood ko, parang okay din ah. Diba? Kasi ang iniisip kasi natin noon, mga kabatas natin, na yung family feud ay between the Aquinos and the Marcoses only. Pero dito pala, mga kabatas natin, may Duterte at saka Marcos na family feud din. Kahapon, nakita natin, mga kabatas natin, yung kwento ni Ferdinand Marcos. Alam na natin lahat yan eh. Yung kwento ni Ferdinand Marcos. Pero hindi natin alam kung kailan, mga kabatas natin, nagsimula yung kwento ng political dynasty ng mga Duterte. Diba? Let's go!
Leading to conflict.
Their problems began in earnest after the Second World War, when Christian settlers in the northern Philippines began to move south in search of land, and brought with them a culture that had no place for Islamic traditions.
Ferdinand Marcos had polled poorly in Mindanao, so to win over the locals, he invited the Mindanao governor to join his cabinet.
O ito na, mga kabatas natin. Dito na papasok yung Duterte. Alam nyo, why do we need to learn this, mga kabatas natin? Because the people who don't learn from the lessons of history are deemed to repeat it. Ako, mga kabatas natin, I don't like political dynasties. Especially if they stretched for decades. Because I believe, mga kabatas natin, that if you are a political dynasty, you have absolute power. And we all know, mga kabatas natin, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Diba? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Bakit ko sinasabing pag political dynasty ka, meron kang absolute power? Kasi nga, mga kabatas natin, wala nang check and balance. It's just a family affair now. Isipin nyo ito. Isang bayan. Okay, city na lang. Congressman, kamag-anak. Mayor, kamag-anak. Councilors, kamag-anak. Nasaan na lang yung check and balance? At tandaan natin, mga kabatas natin, na ang interest ng mga tao is not necessarily the interest of the family. Why? Because we have our biases. That is part of being human. That is human nature. Now, if the interest of your family collided with the interest of the country or the city, let's be logical here. Let's be practical here. Let's employ common sense, if not critical thinking. Sa tingin nyo, ano ang mananaig? Family interest o interest ng taong bayan? Of course, the right answer is interest ng taong bayan. Wrong! Interest ng pamilya. That's the reason why they have this political dynasty, because the interest of the family is also to hold power and money. Kaya hindi nila mabitaw-bitawan yung mga posisyon na yan. Tama yung sinabi ni No Nonsense. Self-preservation instincts will always kick in. Let's go!
The governor's name was Vicente Duterte. It was the first time the two families came together. Vicente Duterte moved to Manila, leaving his wife Soledad to look after their 5 children, including their son Rodrigo. Now remember,
Okay, it's well researched, ha? I didn't know this story, mga kabatas natin. I didn't know this story.
Rodrigo would go on to become the president of the Philippines. Back then, Roddy Duterte was a brat, a son of
Rodrigo Duterte was a brat.
a successful politician who had a team of bodyguards around at all times to keep him safe. The streets of Davao City were a violent and dangerous place, and young Rodrigo loved it. Instead of speaking like the privileged boy he was, he picked up the vernacular of a bugoy, a hoodlum.
Yun ang palabas no? Ito rin ang sabi ko aren't we tired as Filipino people, mga kabatas natin? Kasi nga, yung sinasabi nila noon, nasubukan na natin disente. Sabi nila, hindi naman gumana. O subukan naman natin ngayon, yung bugoy. Si Rodrigo Duterte. Did we improve as a country? Well, it depends on who you talk to. Pero tulad nga sinasabi ko sa inyo, I think there's a problem with sustainability. Whenever we install presidents, we need to install presidents or politicians who are there for sustainability. Sustainability na hindi nila masusustain dapat yung kanilang posisyon. Kundi masusustain yung mga tinatalaga nilang mga trabaho doon, yung mga proyekto nila masusustain ng mga susunod sa kanila. Dapat may legacy sila maiiwan. Hindi yung parang, oops, ako lang yung gagawa nito, ako lang yung savior nyo, ako lang yung dapat nasa posisyon na to forever. O kaya kamag-anak ko. Pag hindi ako o pag hindi ibang tao at hindi ko kamag-anak yan, ekis na. Tuloy natin.
It's kind of difficult to pin down what Rodrigo's life was like back then because the stories he tells are often questionable. His rebellious streak through his teens and 20s is part of his legend. He claims to have stabbed someone to death before he turned 16. He claims to
Pero ito kasi talaga yung mga sinasabi ni Duterte din no? Nakapatay siya, binaril siya, may binaril siya.
have shot someone who bullied him at university.
I am back. Expect.
But fellow students say that this never happened. Rodrigo Duterte's father died
Sabi nila hindi daw nangyari yung mga...
while serving in Ferdinand Marcos's cabinet, and the Duterte family drifted out of the national political eye for nearly 2 decades. During those 2 decades, Ferdinand Marcos let his presidential power
Yan sa, sa Marcos Highway. Yung mukhang yan ni President Marcos dati.
go to his head.
Pinasabog yan
It was 1972.
The democratically elected Marcos, near the end of his term in office, has staged a revolution against his own administration and established for himself a new kind of Asian dictatorship.
Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law and established an authoritarian regime with him.
Okay, alam na rin natin yan. Martial law era. Talon tayo sa Marcos overthrown, alam na rin natin yan. Ito, dito tayo sa Rodrigo Duterte, the mayor.
The rise. She said that she'd prefer her son Rodrigo to do it. The Duterte family, of the Marcos Duterte's mother. As Filipinos sifted through the loot and plunder of the Marcos regime, she was encouraged to get into politics, but she said that she'd prefer her son Rodrigo to do it. The Duterte family were back on the rise.
Nakasuot pa talaga ng patig-patig ba yan?
In the first elections after Marcos left the country, Rodrigo Duterte was elected mayor of Davao. Rodrigo was the polar opposite of the Marcoses. Instead of collecting
Polar opposite of the Marcoses. Kabaliktaran.
jewels and shoes, he collected guns. He was mayor for over 22 years and his time in office was wild. He had a gold-plated revolver on his desk. He was almost always in aviator sunglasses.
Si Bato yun, oh. May buhok pa siya dyan. Look.
He took the toughest possible stance on crime in
Grabe, sapak yun.
aviator sunglasses. He took the toughest possible stance on crime,
Boom.
encouraging vigilante groups, usually made up of off-duty policemen, to go around
Bawal din to Hindi talaga dapat tama yung vigilantism na yan
killing drug addicts. Now, one
Pebbles pa lang siya. Pebbles pa lang ngayon, Bato na.
One thing you need to know about Rodrigo Duterte is he loves jokes.
Alam niyo, yun din ang isang gusto ko actually sa pamamalakad niya, yun sa drugs, na tinutukan niya ito. Pero it was not sustainable. Yung in-implement niya kasi na paraan para para puksain ito, it was not sustainable.
Loves saying things that sound like threats or admissions of serious crimes. And then either he or more often one of his aides will come out later and say that it was a joke. Like the time he boasted that he would himself ride around on his motorbike killing drug dealers to show the police what he wanted them to do.
But in Davao,
Yun, in fairness, mga kabatas natin, ang hirap nung ginagawa ng spokesperson noon ni Rodrigo Duterte na si Harry Roque. Tsaka kung sino pa yung mga naging spokesperson niya doon kasi nagda-damage control talaga sila.
I used to do it personally, just to show to the guys that if I can do it, why can't you?
Ha-ha? The Davao death squad seemed not to realise that the mayor was joking and would post pictures of their dead victims online. Nobody knows how many petty criminals, drug pushers, drug addicts and street children were killed, but estimates coalesce around the 1,000 mark. After 2 decades as mayor, Duterte had basically made himself the king of Davao. His children were the vice mayors. His family has a personal arsenal of more than 600 guns. And their message to the Philippines was, we have solved the crime problem. Davao...
Yun din Nasolve na namin yung problem. Drugs is the problem. If we eliminate drugs, we also eliminate criminality.
City, once the murder capital of the country, is now safe. Actual data to back that up is pretty hard to come by, but it worked well as a propaganda line. People started encouraging Duterte to run for president and to take his policies national. All this while, the Marcos family were trying to regain their former power. In 1989, Bongbong Marcos announced that his father, the exiled dictator Ferdinand, was dead.
God has taken this great man from our midst to a better place, more deserving of his presence.
Bongbong and his mother returned to the Philippines to a warm reception.
Imelda Marcos was mobbed on her...
Imelda and Bongbong return, di na natin kailangan yan. Dito tayo sa The Families yun
In 2022, as Rodrigo Duterte approached his term limit, it was announced that the two families would unite.
Pareho
Now, that
kami.
is catchy. Bongbong Marcos ran for president and won, with Rodrigo Duterte's daughter Sara as his running mate. The two clans united, but there's a problem. And it's their past.
Ayun mga kabalas natin. Dito na tayo. Nag-away na naman sila. At least alam na natin yung kwento. Bago ako mag-end, may ipapalabas ako sa inyo mga
All
kabalas
of this has
natin.
put President Bongbong Marcos in a tough spot. He's doing
Yan. Alam na natin yan. May papalabas ako sa inyo. Gawa ni Pinoy Bro, mga kabalas natin. Sa mga hindi pa nakakapanood dito, panoorin natin. Pinoy Bro Media. Ito. Meron siyang 30-0. Ang title dito mga kabatas natin, kay Pinoy Bro Media, 30-0. Yung link nandiyan dyan.
Dapat ipaglaban ang katotohanan at kasinungalingan. Kung totoo ka, buksan ang mga mata. Huwag magbulag-bulagan, huwag magbingi-bingihan. Kailanman di mananalo ang mali sa tama. Bulok sa sistema, ipipilit baguhin tadhana. Galawan, bungol at bubok ang inyong tinuturo. Sa isko ng buhay, ayan tuloy.
Hindi pwedeng ganun Dapat headbang.
Mabuhay, nagwagi katotohanan. Ang lahat, dinadadaya, di kasinungalingan. Parang si MJ, walang paltos. Sa shoot tila nyo napaso. Di na malayan, walang tigil sa iyakan. Di nila matanggap sa kaso ay talunan. Maabdi para sugat na nasi. Mabuhay, huwag ikatotohanan. Ang dinadadaya, di kasinungalingan. Parang si MJ, walang paltos. Sa syutan, 32-0 ang i-score. Pagdating sa kasuhan, ngayon, tila nyo napaso. Di na malayan, walang tigil sa iyakan. Di nila matanggap sa kaso ay talunan. Maabdi para sugat na nasi. Mabuhay, huwag ikatotohanan. Ang dinadadaya, di kasinungalingan. Parang si MJ, walang paltos. Sa syutan, 32-0 ang i-score. Pagdating sa kasuhan, tahimik na naghihintay sa hustisya. Di mapilang mga pangungutya, banat pamamahiya, banat dito banat dyan, gawa istorya di nadala. Iyak labas ng desisyon, 32 o diba? Leksyon sa buhay, mga lakaw na sa ibabaw ng kalabaw. Huwag panghuli lahat ng tao, may karapatan, pumuna ng mali. Mahirap pa o di pwede, Pilipina mahikot-ikot. Kaya tumatapingin ang pagbalik, ang totohanan, di nagkakamali.
Dito yung tumabingi.
Mabuhay na huwag ikatotohanan. Ang dinadadaya, di kasinungalingan. Parang si MJ, walang paltos. Sa syutan, 32-0 ang i-score. Pagdating sa kasuhan,
Yun. Maraming salamat. Ito yung link. Maraming salamat mga kabatas natin. Siyempre, tulad lang yung sinasabi, matulog po tayo ng mahimbing dahil alam natin na yung natutulog ng mahimbing, siya yung laging panalo. Hindi sa parody natin yun kay Pinoy Bro Media. Nandyan yung link. Spend time with your family po. Paalam pansamantala.